Let's start from the beginning of the Gemara again, Halacha Ches, not the Mishnah, but the Gemara. Kini Mas Nisa. This is the way to read the Mishnah. Nifras shlo b'forav. In general, not just by a ksuva. As I told you yesterday, some people even a goris nifras shlo b'forav. Somebody who gets property granted to him in settlement of a debt owed him when the owner is not present. Lo tifra b'shvua must make an oath before getting the property. Nifroim b'anav shlo b'forav. Ask more, is that true? Do we do collect in general from a person who owes money even if he's not around? Rabbi Yerushalmi said yes in certain instances. The potter, in such a case, a document which has a loan with interest. So therefore, in order to prevent the interest from eating up more, we collect even though the borrower is not present and accounted for. Basically, ribis is based on assist an individual collecting interest. That's Masayed Lovre Avera, right? You're helping people who are committing Averas. The potter, so we can explain. Sha'arev lo min hagoy. It's not a case where you borrow money from a guy, and the guy accepted that he's going to go by the rules of a Jewish court. Now, the Ki'ada actually is not going on this case of ribis, but rather it's a similar case. Where do we see a case that basin goes down to a person's property even though he's not around? Al-Aqsa, certain Amora it seems, Amra Raimon, etc. Other of the Tavus, we do much better than you. Anakas being din mugmarin. We write a document which says that this din has been completed. In asa, if he comes, the borrower to make good, tavus, fine, let him come and make good on his own. Being low, if he doesn't come, ana machlitin nechsaya, we give over the property from the borrower to the lender. Amrale. So Ramon responded, don't think you're so much better than we are. We also do that. We send for the lender, for the borrower, class 3 times. In Asa, if he comes, that's good. Being low, if he doesn't come, we too, we give over the property to the lender, or whoever is owed money, whatever damages, whatever the case may be. Amar lei hagatzmecha. So Al-Aqsa responded. He said, wait a minute, or Al-Qasa, however you pronounce it. He said, wait a minute. Yeah, name of the mosque. I was just thinking that. So Al-Qasa responded. He said, wait a minute. Either it was Arab, Al-Aqsa, or it was a Spaniard, Al-Qasa. So he said, wait a minute. What if the guy's not around? He's far away. So what are you going to do then? I mean, if you guys that you wait till you send him 3 times, maybe he's going to be stuck in Spain. How are you going to handle it then? So Ramona explained, said, we send him 3 times. Chada gotlasin, one for within 30 days. Chada gotlasin, another within the next 30 days. Chada gotlasin, another within the next 30 days. In other words, they say we don't go over 90 days. If he comes in those 90 days, in other words, if we find him, he comes during those 90 days, Hatavus, well and good. Beloved, not on a machlit in the side, we give over the property to whoever's supposed to get it. Amrami Mitzania said, Vush Amma Bedina Baruch, it's only if he stood in judgment here and then fled. I mean, Lo Amad Bedina Ubarak, but if it's before judgment and he fled, Leiskan Machlita, we don't automatically sign over the property in the case of Al-Aqsa, nor even do we give it over after 9 days. In the case of Ramana, El Machrizim, we make pronouncements. In other words, now it doesn't say too when we make pronouncements. Obviously, we don't make pronouncements for the next 10 years. At some point, we have to say, well, he's not coming. We have to give the property to the lender or to the person who's damaged or whatever it is. But it doesn't give any specific time limits here. I don't know exactly when it would happen. But Machrizin, as opposed to Machlitin, Machrizin means we announce that so-and-so, there's a claim against him, and if he wants to come and defend himself, he should come and defend himself. So again, I don't know what the time frame is, but we don't do it right away if he hasn't yet stood in judgment. If he stood in judgment, we give 90 days for him to come and show up and, show cause. Otherwise, we go and we execute the judgment. Says Umar, you come out saying, Chanan Rabbi Shimon B'Davrecha. Now, Chanan is later in the Masechta. Chanan we're going to have later on, and it's going to say if a woman goes to Chutz La'aretz, a man goes to Chutz La'aretz, and his wife wants to be fed, it says there she don't need shvuah, she just collects mizonos, whatever she needs. And here too, Rabbi Shimon said in our Mishnah that whenever she needs, whenever she wants mizonos, if she's not the man of Ksuva, the heirs can't make her take an oath. So there later on, Chanan is about in her husband's lifetime for mizonos, and here in our Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon said about after her husband's death, but also for mizonos. So it seems that it's saying the same thing. She only has to take an oath after, at the end, meaning for property she's collecting, which is not part and parcel of her mizonos, but rather stuff which she's collecting for a ksuva or such like. As so too, the same thing. Ken Rabbi Shimon she takes an oath for if she wants to collect her ksuva, but not on mizonos. Chanan, just we say Allah is like Chanan. Rabbi Shimon that she only has to take an oath if she's collecting her ksuva, not if she's collecting mizonos. In fact, however, the Pnei Moshe brings down here that the Yerushalmi Babli argue about this. The Babli Yerushalmi holds that a woman doesn't have to make a shvuah on her mizonos, only on her ksuva. The Babli holds a woman even has to make a shvuah if she wants to collect money from mizonos. Okay? Okay, now, very interesting sugya here. Hotzia get. A woman produces a get. Beinim ksuva. She doesn't produce a ksuva, but she says, listen, I lost my ksuva, or I misplaced it, but here's the get, I'm divorced, I need my ksuva. Okay? So what do we say? Go to ksuvasa, she collects her ksuva. What about the other way around? Otzia ksuvasa. She produces a ksuva, veinim or get, and she does produce a get. V'yomer's avad giti. She says, I lost my get. Now here, he doesn't say I didn't divorce her. But he will mer avad shovari, I lost my receipt. Not they didn't divorce her. He was masking me to divorce her, but I lost my receipt. I paid already. V'chein ba'al chov shoti shtar chov. So to a ba'al chov, a creditor, produced a debt, the bill of debt. V'enimo prusbul. He doesn't have prusbul to prove that Shemitah didn't cancel it. Harei l'ifrus. The Tanakama says they can't collect, right? Because the woman with the get, she has no proof that she wasn't paid her ksuva, and he claims that he did pay her ksuva. And the man with the prusbul, the man who was a creditor, he has no proof that he had a prusbul. It's just his claim. From the time of danger and onwards, Isha govag below get, a woman can collect her ksuva without a get, because people from that time on were afraid to keep eating. They used to get divorced and then swallow the document. They wouldn't actually keep it around because the goyim would get upset. The goyim also were upset that Jews wrote prusbul, so people would write a prusbul and then destroy it. So therefore, the same thing over there. Now, the Gemara is going to discuss in great detail, but it's interesting. I don't think I told you this. Actually, I know I didn't tell you this, but I mentioned in shul this I think it was this Chanukah, that the Rogachover holds that after the din, after it says by Chanukah, from the time that the Goyim used to confront the Jews, so they no longer let Chanukah candles outside, they only let Chanukah candles inside the house. So Rogachover holds that Mishas HaKona means from that time on there's no din of Pirsum Manes at all. It's only din Pirsum Limnei Beso. There's no din Pirsum Manes to outside the house. And he discussed this actually is discussed in terms of context of whether Bismanis there's any mitzvah actually to light outside the house, which in Chutzos we don't do. It's really only Minig Yerushalayim, but it's not anywhere else is it done really. So the Rogachover wants to tell that Mishas Sakona means even after the Sakona went away, whatever Takona they made at the time of the Sakona remains. You understand what I'm saying? Or whatever that proves. And that, it's a mashma that I can hear, because it's Mishas Sakona ve'elach, I mean it's going to be, even after the Sakona is gone, the Sakona is long gone, but women no longer need to produce kitten. They don't keep them nowadays, right? And a Baal Chov can collect without prusbul. It sounds like they don't need a prusbul. He just has to claim that a prusbul is written. So even though the Sakona is passed, whatever Takona or uprooting of the Takona took place during the Sakona continues on thereafter.
There's no code about the get. People would know that she got the get.
Well, even here. Yeah, Shemush, right. She doesn't have to, so even Shemush doesn't have to produce it. But here, he concedes that that there was a get. I don't think that's the issue here. Okay? Rabbi Chiya B'Shem just says he paid. Rabbi Chiya B'Shem said, HaKori Ara Maisa Basin. If somebody says, cries foul on Maisa Basin, meaning that he says, I'm not liable to pay my wife's ksuva because I paid already. He doesn't have witnesses, but he claims he paid, right? So, local man, he doesn't have the right to do so, because Maisa Basin means something which Basin has produced, and therefore he's liable to, the liability lays upon him unless he can prove otherwise. It's basically like a Motzi Mechaver Lavaraya. If Basin has levied against you ksuva, or which is called a Maisa Basin because they enacted it, so then you can't get out of it unless you have proof. Amar Rabbi Chiya said, hey, isn't that our Mishnah? It says explicitly, get ksuva. If you produce the get without a ksuva, go with ksuva. So obviously you don't need the actual written ksuva. Producing the get is sufficient. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said to this fellow who was speaking here, just forget, Rabbi Chiya he said, Bavlaya! No, it's coming, right? You Babylonian, you! Mean the Galisla Chasva Margalisa. Since Ari took off from you the potsherd from the pearl at Amarli Velomas Nisoi, from after you're going to tell me, well, isn't it a Mishnah? No, you never understood the Mishnah until I told you this, right? It's only required me to point out to you this principle, that after Maisa Basin, he needs a raya in order to exempt himself from Maisa Basin. Only then did you understand the Mishnah in that light. So thank me for giving you the key to understanding the Mishnah. Okay? Says Rav Amar, Rav said, there's only a place in a true place where they don't write a ksuva. In other words, you argue with Rabbi Yochanan. He said, the only time where she produces again without a ksuva, we believe her, is in a city where they don't write a ksuva. But a place where they do write a ksuva, Madi Mafrigo, when she produces, she collects. So if she produces a get, a ksuva, she gets a ksuva. She doesn't produce a ksuva, she doesn't get a ksuva. Then he reneged. And he said, even a place where they do write a ksuva, she collects, even though she has no ksuva with her, only on the basis of a get, that suffices. And Rav challenged the rest of the world. He said, Man Rav Chela, anybody who has the great strength, Masva, to ask questions on my position, Yosef, let him ask questions and try and refute me. So he said, Rabbi Yossi stepped to the plate, and he asked a question. He said, what time did we learn Goiva Gita? It's a brisa, which says that if a woman has her ksuva, but not her get, so we're afraid that she's going... no, what's that? Yeah. The reason why a woman who has a ksuva without a get cannot collect based on the ksuva is we're afraid that maybe she collected based on her get already, hiding her ksuva, and now she's collecting again with her ksuva. Okay, so we're afraid. So this Bible says, Gova Gita, Matmenes Ksuvasa. So we're afraid that she's going to collect with her get, hide her ksuva, because there's the goyim, and then she's going to collect again by producing her get.
So it's the first two cases, one after the other, in sequence.
What do you mean?
Two cases in the Mishnah.
Right. Otzia Ve'im Ksuva. Right. So, one second.
Well, in the Mishnah, the Baal says that he admits that.
That's right. No, we're going to the second case, though. I made a mistake, I think. Otzia Ksuva, we're going to the second case in the Mishnah. Second case in the Mishnah, the third line into the Mishnah said, fourth line from the bottom. Otzia Ksuva, she produced the Ksuva, Ve'im get, she has no get. And she says she lost her get. So in that case, we said that they don't collect, right? So so here it's explaining why is that? Because we're afraid, right? Okay, where she produces her ksuva and not her get, we don't allow her to collect because we're afraid. Vatani gova We're afraid that she collected once with her get, umadmenes ksuvasa, and hid her ksuva at that time, the choseres v'goiva, and now she's collecting again. Right. Okay, that's good. So we're saying like this. We're saying that she, the reason why when she produces her ksuva, is she cannot collect if she has no get, because we're afraid that originally she produced her get, collected money with the get, and at that point had hidden her ksuva. And now we're afraid that she's going to be reproducing her ksuva, or refinding, quote-unquote, her ksuva, and collecting again. Now, so, I'm still not sure I got the sequence right. Yeah, I got it right. 1 second. Okay. So,
the only difference is that here the Baal isn't saying that he isn't admitting that he gave it the get. And in the Mishnah.
Yeah, but the thing is, this price is explained in the Mishnah. It is explained in the Mishnah. This tie is explained in the Mishnah. Let's go over this sequentially because it's complicated. I'll have difficulties also when I was preparing it today. If a woman produces her ksuva, and she wants to collect, she says, I don't have a get, but here's my ksuva, I want to collect. Now imagine, a married woman could do that too. A married woman, one bright morning, could take her ksuva, which of course she has, and say, well, here's my ksuva, I don't have a get, but I want to collect, right? Mm-hmm. We don't allow her to do that. Why don't we allow her to do that? Because we're afraid the next day she's going to go and produce her get and collect again, right? So that means a woman with a ksuva without a get, we don't allow to collect. So I asked Rabbi Yosef is really asking, well, let's say the opposite too. If a woman produces a get without a ksuva, let's be afraid that she's hiding her ksuva to produce it tomorrow, sometime down the line, and collect the second time. So it's a question on Rav. Rav said, we always say, even in a place where people normally write a ksuva, if she lost her ksuva and produced a get, that suffices to collect her ksuva. Why? Let's be afraid that she didn't really lose her ksuva, she's hiding her ksuva. And then she's going to produce it. Just like if she loses her get, if she claims she lost her get, we're afraid to eventually she'll produce her get again, right? So that's the Gemara's question. So it says the Gemara, again, the Ezer B'Yasibatani Govet Gita, Umatmenes Ksuvas. We're afraid that now she's going to produce. She's producing her get, and here I ksuva. We're afraid. I'm sorry, that when she produces her ksuva now and claims she lost her get, eventually she's going to reverse it, right? And she's going to eventually she's hired ksuva and will eventually produce it again. So it says Ein Sham based in. I understand. Why are you afraid of that happening? Base will make sure it doesn't happen. Of course it's not going to happen. There's a base in the city. They'll make sure it doesn't happen. They'll make sure she doesn't collect twice. So there's more Ein Sham based in. I'm sorry, Binam de Matsu. Sorry about we're afraid the based in Ray died. All members of the based in were poisoned. So therefore, they're not there to regulate. But Ein Sham Eidim, aren't there Eidim that she already collected, and they'll make sure she doesn't collect twice? Says more Havu, let's say it's talking about a case where Shalchan the Eidim are gone. Ein Sham Amugaya? Is there no Amugaya, meaning don't they write a shoiver there? Don't they write a receipt? Says the Gemara, lace, it should be lace lay l'rav. It's a question. Lace the Rav Amugaya? And you're going to say that Rav doesn't hold the writing receipts? Of course Rav holds the writing receipts. Is Rav Amugaya? Kain Damar, like Rav holds the writing receipts. Kain Damar, like that which he said. I think that is the answer already. 1 second. Yeah, this is the answer already. So says more, okay, the Gemara's thing is, okay, at this point the Gemara is asking a question. The Gemara's question is, let's write a receipt. Let's write for the husband a receipt. In other words, where we're collecting based on a get which she produced, or ksuva which she produced. We're afraid she'll produce a get later on. So let's make sure to give the husband a receipt. And by giving a receipt, he'll be able to fend off any fraudulent claims against him, right? Because they'll have a receipt from his wife. They actually gave her a ksuba.
So the receipt's lost.
What?
They can answer the receipt is lost, or the husband's not around.
But that's his responsibility already. Okay, so it says more, Israv al-Mugaya, Rav indeed does hold the receipts. And that's precisely the difference here, as we'll explain momentarily. Kehain, the Mar, like that which he said, Avad Kartison, if a person who's a lender loses his shtar, Avad, it should be according to Gillian Frank, Avad Chorin, then his debtor, if a creditor loses a document, then his creditor becomes a free man. Okay, creditor. So we see here that we don't write in these cases a shovar, a receipt, by a regular loan. Because regular loan we don't write a receipt, because if we write a receipt by regular loan, then even if the guy lost his document, let him be able to collect, and he'll say that we'll give Adim afterwards. We'll give a shover a receipt that he paid. Obviously, if we don't collect, that means we don't rely on a receipt. Again, you have a case where a creditor loaned money to a borrower, right? The document got lost. Creditor has Adim. He comes to demand the money. The debtor denies it, right? The debtor doesn't have to pay. Why not? Why does he have to pay?
Because he doesn't have the receipt. Because he doesn't have the document.
Doesn't have the document. So what? Right. So let him pay based on the Adim.
Yeah.
So he says we're afraid that later on he's going to produce the document and collect the second time. So let's write a shover. So the most question is, so let's write a receipt. So they don't write receipts on regular documents. If that's the case, so why do we write receipts on ksuvas? That's Moore's counter question. It's not phrased properly here, but so why do we write receipts on ksuvas? Going to Rav.
Trust women less than they trust lenders.
No. And then a more interesting story. Write receipts on ksuvas because a ksuva you must write over in again no matter what. If a guy loses his shtar chov, he'll say tough luck. You lost your shtar chov. It's true we have Adim, but since we know you had a shtar chov and you lost it, tough on you. But by a ksuva we can't say to a woman tough luck. Why can't we say to a woman tough luck by a ksuva? You lost the tough luck. Why can't we say that?
She may not be able to get back. But he's got a few derisive.
Isha below ksuva also asura l'bayla kanida. A woman's got to have a ksuva. So therefore, you always must. If your wife is a big shlamazel and she loses her ksuva every Monday and Thursday, then every Tuesday and Friday you got to write her a new ksuva, unless you don't want to have relations with her, right? So that you must write your wife. The wife always got to have a ksuva. So you must. The Rav concedes that by a regular bill of loan there are no receipts, but by a ksuva there have to be receipts. Why? Because regular bill of loan, so it's say tough. But a ksuva, if you say tough, it's tough on him because he won't be able to live with his wife anymore. Now, so that's true. So therefore, that's actually Rav's answer to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi asked him a question. It's really not explained properly in the Gemara here. Rabbi Yossi asked him a question. He said, a woman who produces her get and not her ksuva. No, the other way. A woman produces her ksuva and not her get. So he said, we're afraid. Okay, a woman produces her ksuva, not her get. So he said, we're afraid that she's going to eventually produce a ksuva again. And we don't let her collect with the get. Because then it'll come out she's collecting twice. Once with the get, once with the ksuva. So that's a brisa. That explains the Mishnah. So Rabbi Yossi asked the Rav, so how can you say that a woman produces the other way, produces a get and not a ksuva, can collect. Let's be afraid that she's going to produce her ksuva, eventually collect again. Rav's answer to that is that, no. By ksuvas, you're darn right she's got a ksuva somewhere. And we certainly are afraid she's going to produce her ksuva. And we assume she has a ksuva, because she probably lost her ksuva while she was still hunky-dory with her husband. And her husband Taka probably wrote her another ksuva. So therefore, there's only one eitzah by ksuva to write a receipt. So now, if she collects based on the get, we write a receipt. And he just has to keep the receipt to make sure that if she ever comes up with a ksuva again, so he'll have what to fend it off with. But if now she produces a ksuva, right, and he collects now, right, based on this, so okay, we're afraid that in the future she's going to produce a get without a ksuva. And there, you'll say, we wrote a shover, we wrote a receipt, right? Because when she produced a ksuva, we wrote a receipt. Yeah, true. We wrote a receipt when she produced a ksuva. But later on, when she produces a get, we're afraid that at that point, he will have lost the receipt, and he'll have no choice but to pay the get. Now, I'm not explaining, the last point I didn't explain properly. Let me explain it properly. The contrast. Where first she produces a get, and then she produces a ksuva. We're afraid she's going to produce a ksuva later on. First she produces a get and says, pay me my ksuva because I have a get. So there we have no choice anyway but to write a shover. What else are we going to do? She might come out, she is Megureshes. She does deserve a ksuva, right? The next year she'll produce a ksuva. We have no choice. We'll have to write her a shover. But if she produces today, the opposite case, she just produces her ksuva without a get. So then we say, okay, in this case, I'm not going to pay you until you prove you're actually Megureshes. Bring me a get to prove that you're divorced, and then I'll pay you the ksuva. Did I make that clear? Again, if the get, depends what order she comes in. If it's a get, no matter what, we have to work with the assumption of shavarim, with receipts by ksuva, because we're afraid she has multiple ksuvas hidden in her attic from all the time she lost it, right? But if she produces first a get, and then we're afraid she's going to produce a ksuva later on, so we write a receipt. We say, you got your get. We write him a receipt. We say, you paid it up. And then later on, we hope for the best, right? That either she won't produce a ksuva, or if she does, at least he has a receipt. But if all she produced the first time around was a ksuva, so he say, hey lady, any woman can produce a ksuva, right? You prove you're divorced. And that'll say that that's a much better safeguard. So that's basically what Rav answers to Rabbi Yossi. You ask me, well, if we're in a case where she produces a get, in a case where she produces a ksuva, we don't let her collect until she produces the get. So let's say in a case where she produces the get, let's not let her collect until she produces a ksuva. No, the difference is based on receipts. We always write receipts by ksuvas. And therefore, if she collects with the get, we'll write a receipt, and we'll hope that he keeps the receipt for the next time around. But in a case where all she produces is a ksuva, not a get, in that case we have no need to submit to her. We'll say, produce proof that you actually are divorced, and only then we'll pay her ksuva. Okay? All right. So let's say inside again. Is Rav al Magai. Rav does hold of shavarim. Kehein damar over kardison. Like it says, if a person loses shtar chov, over chayrin. Okay, that's too bad. You know, if you knew it, then his creditor's off the hook, right? But Islay, when is a case where Rav holds we do write shavarim? Kihi, it should be kihi damra. In a case where she says Yavad Purna Avad Chorin. In like our case over here, where if she says she lost the ksuva, we have to make another one. So therefore, who knows how many ksuvas they have? So therefore, over here we have to write receipts. Okay, so the bottom line is we write receipts for a woman in a case where we write receipts for the man. Not for the woman. We write receipts for the man in a case where we're afraid of multiple ksuvas. So that's why that's why at ksuva we can deal with receipts, and that's why when she produces first her get, and then at ksuva we pay her, and then we hope for the best that he'll keep his receipt. In a case of a Baal Chol, we don't write receipts. We say tough luck. Because in the ksuva we have to normally write receipts. We have to rewrite ksuvas in order that they should be able to live together. But by shtar, you lose your shtar, tough luck. Okay? In a case where, however, she produced first her ksuva, and only we're afraid later on she'll produce a get and collect again, in that case we say until you produce a get, you don't even collect the first time. Hey, si Raibo asked, it should, instead of da'atain, it should be tehei. Utehei gova begita, let her collect with her get, matmenes ksuvasa, and let her hide her ksuva, tenes achiyomus, and let her wait until her ex-husband dies, because there's a goiva. And then she would be afraid that she's going to collect again from the assignment, from the orphans. In other words, the father will know to produce his receipt, but what are the orphans going to be able to produce? So says the Gemara, Amarle Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef said a very interesting thing, which I don't think is in the Bible at all. He says, if a woman wants to collect after the death of her husband, is it not upon her lohavi raya to bring proof that she was serving him? I don't know if that's a euphemism or literal, right? If she was serving him until he died. In other words, in that case, you're right. We would suspect that there was some monkey business going on, that maybe actually she got her ksuva earlier. In that case, we wouldn't automatically give the ksuva. If she had produced if she collected with a get, and then later on her husband died, and then she produced a ksuva, we'd say, well, bring proof that you were still with him after the original get, you were taken back, or whatever the case may be, and that you have rights to later on. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Zia, Rabbi Avuna Shem Rav said, in a case where they write ksuva, in a place where they write ksuva, he says, I wrote. And she says, you did not write. She has to bring proof that he didn't write a ksuva in order to collect based on the parameters of Maisa Basin. Otherwise, unless she has to document, she doesn't collect. Or in a place where they don't write a ksuva, he says he did write, and she says you didn't write. All of the being proof that in that case he did write a ksuva. Rabbi Chia Barabba, Ashkach Pruzbula de Rabbi Yerneson. Rabbi Chia Barabba found the Pruzbul of Rabbi Yerneson lying in the street. Rabbi Yerneson's Pruzbul was allowed to collect this deed, that's after Shemitah. Vava Pari, he ran, Maitin to give it to him. Amalei says, thank you, but Leisa not tzarichle. Thank you, but I don't need it. The Taiki also learned this in the Brisa, Namana Mal Velomar, lenders are believed to say, instead of stars at prativ, it should be Pruzbul Hoyali. I had a Pruzbul Krativ and I ripped it up because of Sakara. Rabbi Yerushalmi, Rabbi Chia said, or because it's after Shas Sakara, I should say, even if it was Sakara. And Rabbi Yerushalmi, Rabbi Chia said, Masi Salam Rakein, our mission teaches us that. It says, Mina Sakana Veilch from the danger and on, Ha'isha Govish Lo Beget, a woman collects without her get, because we just assume she was divorced, while Chol Govish Lo Bepuzable, and a creditor collects without a pruzable. Ve'ev Sharkain, and is it possible like this, that he collects without a pruzable? That sounds like he collects without a pruzable at all. That doesn't make any sense. Rather, it means it should be Ela ki baltivu krativ. It says, I got the pruzable, but then I ripped it up afterwards. And Hacha, here too, it's about Ksaftiv, I wrote it up, ukrativ, and then I had to rip it up afterwards, and that's sufficient in this case, because we believe him after Shas Hakana that that's what he did. Okay, Shnei Gittin v'Shnei Ksuvas. You have two Gittin and two Ksuvas. A woman produces two Gittin and two Ksuvas. So Gova Shnei Ksuvas, she gets two Ksuvas. We say she was married, divorced, married again, divorced again, and each Ksuva is from a separate marriage. Okay? Base Ksuvas we get if she produces two Ksuvas and one get. O Ksuva Shnei Gittin, or one Ksuva and two Gittin. O Ksuva v'get umiso, or Ksuva, her husband's divorce and then her husband's death. Eino Gova el Ksubach, she only gets one Ksuva. Why is that? Shamagarish is Ishto, if somebody divorces his wife, Machzira and takes her back, Almanatz Ksuvas Rishoina Chizira. Then he takes her back on the conditions of the original Ksuva. So therefore, unless you find explicitly a second Ksuva, we assume she only gets one Ksuva, even if he can prove conclusively that he was married to her, divorced her, and then remarried her, it doesn't matter, she still only gets one Ksuva. Why is that? Because normally we say that unless you explicitly give her the magnanimous gesture of a new Ksuva, you only one Ksuva between your two marriages to her. The first Ksuva rolls over to the second marriage. Okay? Says the Gemara, it says in Mishnah further, Katan Shesiu Aviv, a boy was married off by his father to a girl, which of course is not a valid Kiddushin. Ksuvas HaKemes, nevertheless, whatever Ksuva they wrote when he was a cotton, it's valid. Shamanas Kain Kima, because when he grows up and has relations to her the first time as an adult, that's a binding transaction. Kiershni is Geyer, a ger who converted, V'ishto Imo and his wife with him, Ksuvasa Kayemes, interesting halacha. Her Ksuva is maintained, whatever it was when she was a goy. Shalmanas Kain Kima, because he keeps her on that condition only, that as a Giora, she's not going to suffer from her bottom line more than she would have as a Shiksa. Okay? So, Vush... I guess so. That's what it says. It probably Nichse Milogos, it's on Barza, whatever it was. Vushia get Yetzim Ksuva L'Ksuva. Says the Gemara, it's only true that which she gets two Ksuvas is where you have a Ksuva, then a get, and then another Ksuva from the second marriage. Akadu Mishavos. This makes sense where the Ksuvas were equivalent. Hay Bezumana Bezumasayim. What if the two Ksuvas were different? One divorce, but two Ksuvas. And one was Bezumana Bezumasayim. One has $100 and one is $200. Rabuna Rabbi Yirmiyah Chispa. Chayra one says Goyva B'Rishoina. She collects with the first one. V'Charana Amar. The other one says Goyva, and here the Court made transcription says Goyva Mona. Goyva Mona. Mizman Rishon. He collects the primary part of the Ksuva. She collects the primary part of the Ksuva from the first marriage. Vatosev is Goyva means Manashosnia. The additional amount which she collects from the time of the second Ksuva. So in other words, we're talking about property which became obviously Nechasim Shubarim or is under lien to somebody else in some other way or shape or form. So therefore the halacha is that he gets she can collect, I should say, for the minimal amount from the first ksuva, from sales which took place after that first date, and the additional amount she gets only from the second time. Again, goyim mana means mana rishona from the first time. But the service additional amount goyim means mana shnia omar. She only collects from the second time. Okay. The first ksuva says $100. Second ksuva says $200. So we say $100. She can collect from the time. She can collect from the time of the first ksuva. The additional amount, the extra 100, she can only collect from when? The time of the second ksuva. We're talking about from the chasim shurayim for property which her husband sold in the interim. So she has to go back and take from the customers, based on what the star says. So the first star gives her the minimum, the second star gives her whatever's beyond that. And therefore, for the minimum amount, for the smaller amount, she can go back to the original star and collect from whatever was sold after that date. For the higher amount, she can only go to the people to whom fields are sold after that date and collect from them from the second date. Still not clear?
So what does she collect the 200 on the
So 200 pashas is part of the first ksuva. In fact, the Pnei Moshe wants to say the 200 is obvious as part of the first ksuva. The Omachos is if about 100, 200 which are tosefes. Okay, so when is the mechayev that? That's the Omachos. Okay, it says Gemara. Amra China Kumi Rabbi Mona. China said in front of Rabbi Mona, Leis Hadar Marat, don't learn from here. Do not learn from here. Said Ahain di Yazim in Chavrei, somebody borrows money from his friend. Because of Yazim in and then borrows him again. Tzarech lo lemeimar, that he has to say to him, Levani kartisa karmaya disak rabach, no funny business. This is besides the first debt, this is the second debt. Doesn't have to do that. By ksuva, it says in our Mishnah that unless he wrote to her a second one, so explicitly we assume it's all part of the same transaction. But that you can't extrapolate from that to regular loan. Why is that? Because urchadita saw a meimar. Because by woman, as we said in Amarav, it's normal. She says, Avad Purnam, I lost my ksuva, she says, Avad Choran, make me another one. So even if you have multiple ksuvas, so what do we assume about their multiple ksuvas? It's the result of having an irresponsible wife. But on the other hand, by a shtar chov, you don't do that. If you find multiple shitrei chov, we assume that there are multiple loans. So the default subject by shtar chov is multiple loans. The default subject by shitrei ksuva is that all one ksuva. Okay? Says the Gemara, Ela ki efshar. You know what? At best, I skipped, didn't I? You borrowed from me $100 and you gave me shtar chov. I lost the shtar chov. You think it's like a ksuva? By ksuva, Yankel has no choice but to write for his wife another ksuva. Otherwise, he can't live with her. But you, right? You're my credit, my debtor, right? What do you say to me if you say, "Listen, I lost my shtar chov. You can write me another one"? What do you say?
Tough.
Thumb your nose, right? Tough on you, right? So therefore, if there are two, we assume it's by default, it's two separate loans, not the same loan. So it says more, Ela ki efshar. If I lose my shtar chov on you, maybe, halavai, you're a big tzaddik, maybe you'll concede. But normally they certainly will not write him another document. Rabbi Yehuda Mashikle oil uvdo kum Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda Mashikle brought a maisa in front of Rabbi Yossi by one ksuva and two gittin. Okay, there was one ksuva written and two gittin. So he said, so what was that halacha? So he said, locate Amar Rabbi Avo Shem Yochanan. Didn't Rabbi? He asked him for. He said, didn't Rabbi Avo say the name Rabbi Yochanan? Shtar shalovabo pro. He asked him, how can the same ksuva serve for two marriages? Don't we have a halacha shtar which you borrowed, and I owe you for $200 which has been redeemed? Are you allowed to reuse it? You can't recycle it. Shtarchov shalovabo pro al yuvabo. You can't borrow with it. Afilu bo sayom, even on the same date, so the date is accurate. You can't re-borrow with it. So how can you use the same ksuva again? Amrei said, I'll tell you, Kamsha Pro. By the IOU, it's been paid back. Kamsha Pro, the ksuva's never been paid up. So therefore, you can use it in the second marriage. Tani Rabbi Chaim Kul Rabbi Hila, Tchein Amorim. So Machokas Yichun Amorim. Chaim once said, Look, ksuva v'lo t'noim. When it rolls over between the first marriage and second marriage, or he was married to a woman, divorced her, and then took her back. So the ksuva, he said, rolls over. But that's only the ksuva itself, avlo t'noim, but not the t'nai ksuva. My ksuva she loses. My ksuva for the first marriage was very romantic. Second marriage, romance is out the window. So therefore, there's no t'nai ksuva. So chonarando ben ksuva ben the t'noim, whatever t'noim, when the first ksuva roll over to the second ksuva. Okay, getting back to the mission. Nicha ger. I understand a ger, he accepts upon himself the yoke or whatever he promised her as a shiksa. But the cotton megarish, if a cotton's divorcing, I mean, it says when the cotton is megarisher. First of all, how is the cotton divorce? Right? That it should roll over. Right? And it says, you're right. It's not that way the cotton divorce. So obviously in that case, you can't divorce, and it really doesn't roll over because he had no das. Right, I tell you about, just like Rechina said, Ushabol Mishtakech Mishnishtaper. So in another case, he said that the Bia, which makes it a true Kiddushin, is the one after it becomes lucid or healthy again. So to have a Ko Shabol Mishitu, to have a case where he had relations with her after they both grew up. And in that case, the first time they have relations, that's the meant whatever deal was enacted even when he was a Kotan. Okay? Hachlach HaKesav Lishto. Masdisin. Misha Yonosi Shtei Noshim. How's a law like this? If a woman predeceases her husband, midoraisa her husband just, I shouldn't say midoraisa, mitin, her husband inherits her. But there's concept Kesuvos bonim dichrin, which is that a husband writes his wife, if you predecease me, your money for your Kesuva will go to your heirs. I won't take it. It'll go to your heirs, whatever children you have, or brothers you had, or whatever. Actually, it's children. Kesuvos bonim dichrin. Your male children will inherit whatever was coming to you. So that's an incentive for her parents to give a lot of money to the dowry. Because it won't just go to that stinking husband, it'll go to her nice children, their grandchildren, right? So it says more, what happens? So the first one dies before the second one. So Yersha Rishon, according to Yersha Rishon, in this case they both died either after the husband died. So the heirs of the first woman inherit before the heirs of the second woman because she died first. She's first in line. What if she married the first one, Mason? She died before he did. Mason, Nasser, she then married the second wife, Umesu, and then he died after her, right? So Shnia v'Yoshea, the second woman and her heirs, they have preference over the first woman and her heirs. You know why? Because the second woman, she's a creditor. Because she died after him, so she's owed the Ksuva. And creditors always take precedence over heirs. And the first wife's kids, they're only heirs. Heirs come after creditors. So the second wife who outlived her husband becomes a creditor. The first wife who predeceased her husband, she's only her children who are inheriting her because the Kesuvos bonim dichrin, they're only heirs, and they get shunted to the sidelines. Okay?
Getting the Kesuva after the death of the husband is considered not
Priyas Barachov.
Not an heir, not an inheritance.
No, absolutely not. It's not inheritance. It's right. It's just paying up a debt. Okay, Masisa and Kesuva. In terms, our mission is to talk about Kesuva. Avliya Mizos in terms of Mizonos, it makes no difference which wife died first. They're both equivalent. Which wife married first, I should say. In Mizonos Shteim Shavin, they both get the same Mizonos. Kesuva Kfura. What happens if one wife is owed a Kesuva and the other wife is owed a burial? She's lying out there. Her corpse is lying out there. Mikaidim, who comes first? Kesuva Milavedim. A Kesuva and a loan which is Baal Peh. No Shibud. Who comes first? Mikaidim. Kesuva Parnasos Banos. A Kesuva and paying dowry for the daughters of the deceased. Mikaidim. Who comes first? Ma'anim Argoyim Parnasim Yeshubah. So at least this last question more resolves, and perhaps the other ones can be resolved based on this. If you hold that you collect for Parnasim for dowry, Mishubadim from property on the lien, Parnasos Bonos Kodmos, sustaining the daughters comes first, because that obviously was while the wife was still alive, whereas the Kesuva only is after death. Mandamar Avin Goyim Parnasim Mishubadim, you don't collect Parnasim from Mishubadim, ain't Parnasos Bonos Kodmos not considered to be a prior lien, because it's not a true lien, because you don't collect, the proof of that is that you don't collect from property which is under lien. Okay? It says Mar Lo Mar Elamesa. Now it says here, she died. It only says she died. Honey's Garsha, what if she got divorced, the first wife? She's also like a creditor, right? Because then she gets a Kesuva, she's not inheriting anything, right? Tani, like that which no say she marry woman, because of the Kesuva, write her Kesuva. Girsha, they ain't divorce her. Vilna Sala Kesuva, it ain't give her Kesuva. Nasa Chesh, you marry another woman, because of Kesuva, and then you write her Kesuva. Second woman obviously didn't consult the ex-wife. And then you took back the first wife, the Kasav Ksuva, and write for her Ksuva, Al Ksuva Sarishona, on top of her first Ksuva. It's a very complicated case. You married a woman, divorced her, right? Never paid her Ksuva. Married another woman in the interim. Then remarry your first woman. and promised her a second ksuva besides the first one, which she defaulted on. Right? So now, needless to say, what happens to you next is you drop dead. Serves you right. So in that case, Rishoina kodemis l'shniya. The ksuva, the first one, which is narrated up, precedes the ksuva, the second one. V'yorsheh, asher Rishoina kodemis l'shniya v'yorsheh, v'shniya v'yorsheh kod konmim. However, the second one and her heirs take precedence. It should be their birds with here. Lishniya shel Rishoina. For the second one and the first one. Right. So the first wife's first ksuva comes before the ksuva of the second wife, which comes before the second ksuva of the first wife. It's chronological. It's really very straightforward. Okay, now we're going, again, it should be, their words with here, it'll be Shniya v'yarsher koidmin liyarsher Rishoina. Now the second one has come first. Now let's talk about a case where the first wife died, then the husband died, then the second wife. Then the second wife died. Wife, husband, wife. Okay? So what happens in that case? So the heirs of the first wife should get what? Ksuvas banim dichrin, which is a rabbinic takana that they inherit the ksuva which is coming to her. But that's a form of Yerusha. The second wife's children, they're getting a bona fide ksuva. Right? So now in that case, right? So what do they say? So now it should say here, it says Yerush Rishona Oimrim. It should say, so there's a lot of mistakes on this page. It should say Im Mesa Rishona B'chayav. Mesa Echad B'chayav Echad Moses from the Carbonata. If one died during his lifetime, Echad Moses went after his death. Yicholim Yerush Rishona. The Yerush Rishona can say Omrim the Yerush Rishona. They say the second one. Inka Ba'achov at them. Look, I skipped. There's bananas somewhere. I skipped the words Omer bananas. You see those words Omer bananas? So now it says the heirs of the first one say to the heirs of the second one, look, Inka Ba'achov at them. If you want to be like creditors, fine. Plush, you want to be that way, fine. Plush Shalachem, take your stuff, Utsu, and then leave us, and we get everything else. Because we're heirs and you're only Baal Chov. So what's the halacha when you have Baal Chov and heirs? Baal Chov comes first, but then the heirs take everything left. Right? So we have an advantage from the fact that we're heirs. That we should get whatever's left after you take away the ksuva. If you're not agreeable to that, then you must relinquish your status as Baal Chov and divide with us equally. That's bananas. Amar Akiva says no. B'nei shniya kafz aleim Yerusha Torah. They say no. You're mistaken. We're heirs just as much as you. Plus, we have a superior status because our mother was owed the ksuva. So it's not like you think. You think our status, your status as heirs came first, and therefore our status is weaker because we're only creditors. And we got whatever our credit is coming to us, and then afterwards everything goes to you. We get to have our cake and eat it too. We're creditors vis-a-vis our mother's tzuva, and besides, for the other stuff, we're yarshim with you and we split up 50-50. Okay? So that's what they say. So give us their, they get, they're Yorshim Doraisa. They're even better than the first ones, because the first ones, they're Yorshim only because of the Rabbanan. Ksuvas Bain Dichus the Rabbanan. Really, the husband should have inherited anything which was coming to his wife, which predeceased him. So the first one's only Yorshim Dorabanan. They're Yorshim Doraisa. So they certainly say we get our cake and eat it too. We get the Ksuva, and then we get the Yerusha on top of that. Another Ksuva Simon B'chayzin Chokin. Raimon Omar, now, did you guys any of you daven yet? I didn't daven either. Okay, we'll just go a little bit late. Let's see, I'm not sure how far we can get anyway now, because it's a little bit complex. Raimon Omar, might have said, Bish, you're up to Marv? You go start daven. I'm going to daven there too. I'll be there in a minute. This clock is not fast though. It's not slow. Yeah. It's only if there's at least $1 left after this whole dispute. In other words, after they collect the ksuva, after the ksuva is collected, there's at least $1 left. Avol im ein sham dinar yeser. But if there is an extra dinar, let's say after they collect their ksuva, the second kid, guys, there's nothing going to be left. So in that case, now you have to read the place, the carbon A, everybody changes around the gear. So skip 5 lines. See where bananas? See bananas? If there's nothing going to be left, so even bananas, Rabbi Akiva, bananas will agree to Rabbi Akiva. B'nei Ashniya kaftalem Yerushas Torah. The sons of the second one, they get the status of the Yerushas Torah. The Noitli Ksuvas Iman, and then they get they get first the Ksuva of their mother, and then v'chosim v'chokim. They go back and they divide. Of course, there's nothing to divide, but they get first the status of Ksuva and tough on the other ones because they're creditors, right? Now, what about Amalei Rabbi Yossi, going back now? Amalei Rabbi Yossi, Berun, Hachtalo Tanisa Pliga, Amalei Pliga. That's that which is not mentioned in Machlokas. As a Machlokas, you make a Machlokas. El b'she'ein sham yeser dinar nechlaku. No, the Machlokas is when there isn't an extra dinar. Avlim yesham dinar yeser dinar. But if there is an extra dinar beyond the ksuva, then af, and here it should be af Rabbi Akiva yoida leben. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not sure if I should actually change it. I better leave this to tomorrow night because I'm confused. I'll come back to Machlokas ben Nanas for Rabbi Akiva because I talk. I'm not sure if I'm getting this right now. All right.